All right, everybody. Good evening. A little bit later than I usually post videos, but I thought today we'd make a little bit of an exception because tonight was a very special night. Tonight was the night where the NFL and the Associated Press hands out their honors or individual accolades and awards. And the ceremony wrapped up just a handful of minutes ago, and the awards have been handed out. Now, the Seahawks were not there physically because they're busy with the Super Bowl, but they did have nominations in several categories. So there was an opportunity for the Seahawks to win some hardware tonight. And in the case of one player, one particular person, we have. So let's go ahead and give a huge shout out. Now, this was kind of expected, but nevertheless, very cool. Jaxon Smith-Njigba is the Offensive Player of the Year for 2025's NFL season. All right, everybody, before we go any further into this video, I want to take a minute to tell you guys about the Sleeper app. We are just about to the Super Bowl. Now would be a great time to get on Sleeper. It's a one-stop shop for all your sports needs. Celebrate and chat about sports in real time with other users. You can get scores, you can get news, you get alerts with blazing fast speed, all kinds of sports stuff. You can play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. Enjoy sports together with a community. Download the Sleeper app today. And when you do, use promo code SBN for up to $100 match on your first deposit. And also, utilize the free $20 entry with no deposit required. All you have to do is make an account for that one. Terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states and growing. So check out Sleeper and have some fun with sports this year. So that's a pretty big one, right? Offensive Player of the Year is often like a consolation prize for players that could be MVP but will never win MVP, right? Because MVP almost always goes to a quarterback. A lot of the time, they'll give Offensive Player of the Year to a non-quarterback that they view as like the non-quarterback MVP. Now, this year, I don't know if that's true or not, because they do sometimes give Offensive Player of the Year to a quarterback, and sometimes they give Offensive Player of the Year to the guy who won MVP anyway, but they didn't do that. They gave it to JSN, and obviously, the guy is very deserving. He led the league in receiving yards. He led the league for non-running backs in yards from scrimmage. He had 119 catches, 10 touchdowns. Phenomenal season. I don't need to belabor the point here. You all know how good JSN was this year. He led the league in receiving yards on a team that is 30th in the NFL in passing attempts. The Seahawks do not throw the ball hardly ever compared to most of these other teams, and he's still the league leader. He's still the top receiver in the game. Now, the voting was close. Mirnov here, My Sports Update, lays it out with the first place votes. JSN had 14 first place votes. Christian McCaffrey had 12 first place votes, and Puka had 8. So that's pretty split. That's a wide range of voting. Typically, these things are relatively clear. Typically, the winner of these things kind of runs away with it. So this was tight, but ultimately JSN did pull ahead. He also ended up winning by about 50 points or 49 points, ironically. JSN 272 points in the voting. Christian McCaffrey 223. Puka had 170. So it wasn't super close like the MVP was. It was fairly close. And Christian McCaffrey, that one's a little bit weird to me. I'm really surprised by that. Christian McCaffrey was not a particularly good running back this year. He averaged less than 4 yards a carry. He caught a lot of passes, mostly because the 49ers didn't have great options to throw to other than him. I don't know if I'd consider him to be an Offensive Player of the Year type guy, but obviously it doesn't really matter that much because he didn't win it. But I really thought it was going to come down to JSN and Puka didn't even finish second. So JSN, Offensive Player of the Year, already made the Pro Bowl, already made first team All Pro. Obviously, he's playing in the Super Bowl in a few days. I mean, hard to beat that, right? Very, very special season. Was a real treat to watch. Didn't think he was going to be this good in the NFL. I don't see how anybody could have. Like, he is being recognized as the best receiver in football. And if you want further affirmation of that, you also had JSN as one of the FedEx Air and Ground Players of the Year. They had Drake May, Christian McCaffrey, and JSN. And usually, FedEx Air and Ground Players of the Year is just the best quarterback, best running back, and best wide receiver. So what this says is they think JSN is the best wide receiver. Now, who else would they pick in a year where they already gave JSN Offensive Player of the Year? But it does kind of reaffirm it. So that's a second award that he won. I know that FedEx Air and Ground Player of the Year doesn't necessarily have a lot of aura, but it's still a credible award and it carries some weight and it does represent how good JSN is. So awesome. Now, admittedly, that was the end. That was the only thing the Seahawks got. Offensive Player of the Year and FedEx Air and Ground Players of the Year, one of the three. If you go to look at the other awards they handed out, let me zoom in a little bit here. Stafford won MVP. The Seahawks didn't really have an MVP candidate. By the way, that vote was extremely close between him and Drake May. Yeah, like I said, JSN. Defensive Rookie of the Year, this one hurt some feelings. Carson Schwarzenegger won, which I think is understandable, and I kind of saw it coming, but it was a blowout. Schwarzenegger got 40 first place votes. Eman Wari got 7 first place votes. It was not even close. And look, I think that ultimately this really came down to the fact that Eman Wari missed several games and Schwarzenegger played in every game. So therefore, I think that Schwarzenegger won running away because of that. I think that if Eman Wari had played all 17 games, started all 17 games, then it'd be a lot more competitive. But those missed games, I think, gave it to Schwarzenegger. I don't know if the difference between the two justifies this kind of a blowout. Now, Eman Wari did finish second, which is cool, but it's a distant, distant second. The Pro Football Hall of Fame class this year, by the way, is pretty banging. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald, Drew Brees, Luke Kuechly, Adam Vinatieri, Roger Craig. That's a really good class. And there were definitely some guys left out that I expected to get in, but they'll have opportunities down the line. So the important thing is you look at these 5 guys that are going to get in for the 2026 class, very strong. A lot of players that I grew up watching. Roger Craig was before my time, but 100% grew up watching these other guys play. NFL Coach of the Year. This was another one where Seattle fans kind of got their feelings hurt a little bit. And here I tend to agree with the people who have their feelings hurt. Coach of the Year went to Mike Vrabel. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Mike Vrabel. He did obviously a very good job this year. And the Patriots' turnaround this year from one of the worst teams last year to one of the best teams this year, I understand where this comes from. But I have a very, very hard time being convinced that he did a better job than Mike Macdonald, who won just as many games in the toughest division in football, whereas Vrabel got to play that ultra soft schedule and got a relatively cheap path to the Super Bowl versus Macdonald. Yeah, the Niners game was kind of cheap, but they had to play the other best team in the league in the Rams in the NFC title game. So I will admit I don't agree with this one. And honestly, if you're not going to give it to McDonald, and I think Coach of the Year should have gone to McDonald, then what about Shanahan? Somehow Shanahan finished 5th. A guy who won 12 games and a playoff game with a billion injuries. Patriots had barely any injuries this year, and every time they did get a little bit injured, they ran into big trouble. Like, you bring up that Buffalo game, the game where the Patriots lost to the Bills 35-31. All any Patriots fan will tell you about that game is they didn't have Milton Williams and I think Robert Spillane. So, little bit of adversity, things didn't go so well for that team. 49ers ran into adversity every single week over and over and over and over and over again. And somehow he finishes 5th. Liam Cohen finished second, by the way. I like Liam Cohen, but I don't know. I'm having a hard time agreeing with the idea that he was better than McDonald this year. And look, I know McDonald's his team won 10 games last year, so it wasn't a massive improvement, but the defense going from slightly above average to best in the league, the offense going from average to one of the best in the league, getting it done with all that dead money on the books, very little money being spent on the actual roster compared to other teams. I don't know, man. I don't know. Feels like it could have been McDonald, and in my book, it should have been McDonald, but Vrabel got it. So that was another pretty big one. Comeback player of the year was CMC. Sure. I didn't think it was a great year for this category. I didn't really know who I thought was going to win. I didn't really know who to pick. So Christian McCaffrey's as good as anybody else. NFL protector of the year was Joe Thuney, a guard for the Bears. All right. Ted McMillan won offensive rookie of the year. I can get behind that. Myles Garrett, of course, won defensive player of the year unanimously. And one last Seahawk-related note, Josh McDaniels won Assistant Coach of the Year. This was a category where Clint Kubiak was nominated, but he finished 5th. So there was never really much of a chance of him winning, even though he's had a phenomenal season by any measure. McDaniels does make sense because the Patriots offense was atrocious last year, and they were in the top 3 offense this year. So that turnaround, combined with the fact that Drake May almost won MVP in his second year, and the fact that they're making it work without having extraordinary talent at receiver, and they don't have a very good offensive line, like I get this one. This one makes more sense to me than Vrabel, because I do think what McDaniels has done with not an uber talented set of offensive players is pretty standout. And then you can see Vance Joseph, 10 votes, Brian Flores, 8, Vic Fangio, 4, Clint Kubiak got 3 with Matt Burke, Robert Saleh, who I thought Saleh was going to probably win this earlier this year, but his defense really fell apart, 2 votes, et cetera, et cetera. And that's it. That's it for the NFL honors. So JSN is the only Seahawk to win anything, but he wins 2 things, and one of them is pretty darn big. Offensive Player of the Year, that's pretty fat. So pretty cool. Obviously, he wasn't there to claim it because he's busy right now, but special season, special player, and he deserves it. He deserves it, and I'm so happy for him. And I'm happy we were able to win something tonight. And I just hope that we can take home the last bit of hardware in a couple of days. That's obviously way more important to me. Okay, so I'm going to go and get on out of here. I'll see you guys probably tomorrow at this point. I'm going to stream on Twitch, I think, tonight, but no more videos tonight for obvious reasons. Tomorrow's Friday, last day of the week before we get to the weekend, and we're getting there, guys. We're getting there. So congratulations, JSN, and congratulations to everybody else who won something. All right, see you guys later.